Another round of physical comedy and another special guest star are part of episode 4 of season 2 of the new Frasier reboot. Let's talk about the dedication. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my TV review for the latest Frasier episode. We are in season 2. This is episode 4, and you can catch this now on Paramount Plus. It's called The Dedication, and I've been doing my weekly Frasier reviews ever since the new reboot, so you can go back and check out some of the ones if you missed them. And I have old season reviews for the 90s edition of Frasier, the original Frasier series. I have those in season by season reviews, so you can check out all that on the channel here. If you are one of my subscribers already, thank you so much. Welcome back to the channel. Always good to have you. But if you're not one of my subscribers, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below and the notification bell so you get the tips on all my new video drops. I don't just do Frasier stuff on the channel. I do movie reviews and a lot of other TV stuff as well. So always a lot to check out. All right, so this is called The Dedication. It was directed by James Burrows, our good buddy who directed so many Cheers and Frasier episodes previously, and of course many other things. I always talk about his work on Will and Grace, and he directed some Friends episodes, whatever. So he's definitely always great to see. And this was written by a newcomer to the Frasier universe, Matt Kuhn. But I looked him up, and he has been a part of over 50 episodes of How I Met Your Mother, either in writing or producing, and 10 episodes of Fresh Off the Boat as well. So certainly he knows his way around a sitcom. And How I Met Your Mother, even though there was a laugh track per se, was not, as far as I'm aware, filmed in front of a live audience. They kind of peppered that in after the fact. I think a lot of that had to do with the structure of the show, just because there was a lot of like flashing back and stuff like that, and you know, things that they shot outside studios. So as far as I know, that was not shot in front of a studio audience. Fresh Off the Boat was a single camera sitcom. So this may be Mr. Kuhn's entry into the filmed in front of a live studio audience universe. But look, you know, the writing here is going to be the same for a show like How I Met Your Mother anyway. But anyway, so this is called The Dedication, and the basis for everything is this dedication to Eve's deceased ex. He was one of the firefighters with Freddie, and, you know, so it's been a year now. They're finally dedicating something to him at the firehouse. So there was, you know, a little bit of a ceremony and some speeches and all of that. And so part of the episode, both parts of the episode kind of stem from that. But the B story, let's say, is Eve and Freddie kind of going through a box of John's old stuff, and neither one of them really wanting to get rid of anything. You know, the idea was, let's, you know, take out the things that we need and put them aside and put them in a different box or whatever, so we can remember John. But, you know, they started pulling out like a sock and this and that and the other thing. And it turns out they didn't want to part with any of it. So that was sort of the B story. And then the A story stemmed from something that Frasier had seen at the dedication after sort of the speeches and everything. People were mingling, and some of the firefighters came over to Frasier and, you know, just were talking to him. And Frasier said, "Hey, who's that woman that's over there talking to Freddie?" And it turns out it is his therapist. And Frasier, shocked that his son has a therapist that is not him, that he would, you know, confide in someone other than his father, who is a professional therapist, obviously. And she is played by Amy Sedaris, so that's your special guest star for the episode. But Frasier, of course, takes it personally and never one to let something go. He ends up going to her office, and it turns out she kind of is a part of the firehouse. She is sort of the firehouse therapist. So there again, it makes even more sense that he would be going to her, because apparently a lot of the firefighters do go to her. Now, I didn't get the impression that that was her only job, like she, you know, spends every day there, but I think she's probably there a couple of times a week or whatever. She has an office there. She shares it with the dog, the Dalmatian. There was some humor there. But in any event, so Frasier, you know, goes to her and is trying to find out information about Freddie. But she, is super starstruck because he, of course, you know, after the 90s iteration of Frasier, he became a famous TV Dr. Phil-like psychiatrist, and he had a show and everything. So, he's very famous, and that gets brought up, every so often. But here we have like an Uber fan or whatever, and so she's starstruck. But even that does not get her to sort of break her rules and the rules of the Psychiatry Association and all of that by giving him any information. Really, she couldn't even confirm or deny that Freddie is one of her clients. So she's really sticking hard and fast to that. But Frasier being Frasier, she leaves the room and he ends up stealing Freddie's file. So he takes it to Mahoney's, the bar, and he goes over it with Olivia and Alan and says, hey, I haven't looked at this yet. What am I supposed to do with it? I really need to know what's going on with Freddie, if he's okay, X, Y, and Z. And for some reason, well, we've learned the reason, but Alan is actually the voice of reason here. Olivia sees it as a puzzle to be solved. And Alan says, you absolutely cannot do this. And look, we learned last week about Alan's estranged daughter. She's not really, in communication with him at this point, even though his granddaughter or grandson is about to be born, and that is just eating him up. So he says to Frasier, hey, you've built all this trust recently with Freddie. If he finds out that you did this, if he finds out that you looked in his file, all that trust is gone, and you will have to start from scratch, and that is a bad place to be, essentially. So Alan, the voice of reason, we don't usually see that, right? But then it's a matter of, okay, well, you guys are right, I'm not going to look, but how do we get this back into the therapist's office? And Olivia sees that kind of as another puzzle. Alan at least tries to convince her as such, but she's like, okay, I'm out now. I don't want anything to do with this. So him and Alan end up returning, and that's where your physical comedy comes in, because Amy Sedaris walks in while they're sort of milling about in there. Alan made mention earlier in the episode. This was a nice seed that was planted about how Alan does not like dogs. It was sort of a throwaway line, but then it comes back in the latter half, and I enjoyed that little sort of nugget of foreshadowing. So they get kind of caught. So Frasier says, hey, listen, I came back to bring you a memento from my show, which, of course, he didn't have on him because he didn't think ahead like that. So he gets out this first edition Keats book that he had, a book of poetry that, again, referenced earlier in the episode when Eve was sort of struggling for what to say at the dedication. He mentions a couple of lines from Keats, and she politely sort of bows out of that conversation, says, look, I'm out of my element, bub. I can't really help you. So that's some other foreshadowing. The Amy Sedaris character wants nothing to do with this book. She was hoping it was like a autographed, whatever from the show, a script or something. But no. So she kind of throws it on the couch, much to Frasier's surprise and horror. But he says, look, let me give you, at this point, by the way, Alan is hiding kind of under the desk. He's like, let me give you a one-on-one session here. Let's talk a little bit. So he faces her to the door away from her desk. And this is, for me, the funniest part of the episode. He is giving her, quote unquote therapy, because really he's focused on getting the file back into the filing cabinet. But he is basically telling Alan through his psychiatry of her what he should be doing. There was an axe in the room. He axe. Were there any acts of, whatever from your childhood? So he was sort of incorporating whatever he was saying to Alan into her speech. So not only was it some physical comedy over on that side from Alan, and the dog gets out of the cage and everything, but also some wordplay with Frasier. Always good to see that. Always clever when they enter into the wordplay zone. But anyway, eventually they get the file back, and all is okay. Freddie will be none the wiser, even though obviously it was a terrible thing for his father to do. But anyway, so that's basically the episode. I mean, the B story ends with Eve and Freddie kind of starting over from scratch and saying, okay, look, if there's, something that we don't personally have a story for, I think John would want us to just keep things that meant something to us, not necessarily just a box of his stuff that we don't even know anything about. So they sort of start over. And then there is, I guess it's attached to the B story, but you could also call it a C story, I suppose, where Niles and Daphne's son. I always forget his name because he's such a useless character, but let's see here. Yeah, what's his name? David Crane. Okay. So David is again very sort of briefly in this episode. I think this is wise. I think they're using him a little more wisely, just have him come in for a scene or two. But one of the things she's looking to get rid of is this computer game that John was like obsessed with back in the day, and we realize that David also knows of, or I don't know if he knew of the game specifically. I think he did, right? And so he decides to spend kind of all night sort of trying to beat it to, quote unquote, prove that it still works so you can sell it. Let me test play it, what have you. And he ends up getting sort of obsessed with it. But they don't really lean into that very much. It's sort of a throwaway joke at the end of the episode where he sort of plops his head down on the computer because he's been playing all night. And he was tired, but that was sort of it. For me, they actually might have done a couple of more jokes with him. I think as much as maybe we don't love the character, if you're gonna give him something to do, at least give him a couple of extra lines or something. He was this episode and the last episode, he was just barely in, which again, I don't know that I hate. He's certainly not my favorite character, but I don't know if they're going to give him a sort of C story, or at least mildly attach him to the B story, give him maybe a couple other things to do. So look, all right, that's the whole episode essentially. So let's talk about it briefly. Overall, I think this was an okay episode. Looking back at last week's, I actually think I probably graded it a little too highly. It was definitely a more average episode, but there was a nice emotional moment with Frasier and Alan last week, so I bumped it up a little bit to a B, but I think it's probably still more in that B minus range, because I think this episode is probably more of a B. I would say I got probably the same amount of laughs in each episode. I always love when they do not only physical comedy, I've mentioned that before, specifically this season, because the first episode had a lot of physical comedy with David, believe it or not, but the wordplay, the clever wordplay when he's doing the one-on-one session with the Amy Sedaris character, I liked that. A lot of good stuff there between his wordplay and Alan's physical comedy and stuff. However, one of Frasier's biggest issues, the character, not the show, is that he just is always desperate for people's approval, and specifically, from Freddie. And to be honest, I don't know, it seemed very, very odd that he would be so upset that his son wouldn't come to him in a crisis with not a specific issue, but just an overall like counseling issue. I don't know, like my mom is a therapist, and I can't imagine that I would want to go to her for a weekly therapy session. Like that seems like not only a huge, I don't know, not breach of trust or anything, but just like, it just seems like not the person you'd want to go to. I mean, you're telling your therapist, at least if you're really serious about your therapy, you're telling them, your deepest fears and your, whatever, every single aspect of your life is sort of gone over with a fine-tooth comb. And I don't know, maybe some people have a close enough relationship with their parents to do that. Not that, I'm certainly not like estranged or anything from mine. It's fine. We talk about a lot of things, but I don't see that being a great idea. Like, it seems an obvious choice to me that Freddie would not want to seek out his father for professional therapy. But Frasier's point was, he just comes in and says, I'm fine, or things are okay, whatever. So yes, okay, but they have had a strained relationship, and it is a little bit tough to kind of build those blocks back up and have that trust. So it makes sense to me that Freddie would not want to. I'm a little shocked that Frasier was that kind of obsessed with wanting to know what's going on with Freddie, that he would go so far as to sort of break really his own code of ethics, I would think, and steal his son's file. Like, it seemed a little far-fetched. I know we're in a sitcom. I know we have to have some broad comedy strokes, and we will suspend disbelief for certain things. But there has to be some sense of realism as well. And that plot line did not really ring true. I didn't think. But now the B story I really liked. Losing a loved one is always going to be hard, and going through their stuff is also not easy. And what do you throw out? What do you not? I haven't gone through that yet with my parents or my siblings or anything. Everybody, is still healthy and with us right now. But I've had friends lose parents. I've had friends lose spouses, and it's tough, obviously. So I really like the way they handled that with both humor and grace. So that for me was the best part of this episode, even though I think the funniest scene was with Frasier and the therapist doing their one-on-one session with Alan trying to put away the file. So a little bit of a mixed bag for sure for me. Again, I'm kind of between like a B or a B minus. Look, I think there's better episodes to come in this season. I imagine we're going to have a Lilith episode at some point, and I know we're going to bring Bulldog back at some point as well as Gil Chesterton. So I think there is better episodes to come. I think this one kind of sits in that same kind of area as last week's episode. So I will leave this one, which again is called The Dedication, with a B minus. But look, I think we still have all positive grades this season. So here's to more episodes, maybe more like the first two for this season than episodes 3 and 4, but still pretty good episodes. Next week's is going to be called The Squash Courtship of Freddie's Father. So obviously there's some sort of squash tournament maybe, and that's a take on a 70s sitcom called The Courtship of Eddie's Father. So we will look forward to that. I do always love a Frasier competition type episode, so maybe that will be next week. But in any event, join me for that, and you can check out the season so far on Paramount Plus, and season 1, of course, is still up on Paramount Plus as well. Thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. I'll see you next time. Bye.